Welcome to your deep dive. Ever feel like the world's kind of made for extroverts? And you're left wondering, well, how do I thrive as an introvert?
Yeah, that's a common feeling.
It is. So we're diving into Susan Cain's book, Quiet,
Oh, good choice.
to uncover the science behind it all, like what's actually going on and how to unlock that introvert power.
I love that phrase, introvert power.
hmm
Kane really digs into that.
She does. We have some excerpts he sent over, so we're going to go through those.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
What I find fascinating is how she doesn't just focus on, individual traits. She looks at how society itself favors extroversion.
Right, like it's not just you, it's the whole system.
Yeah, she calls it the extrovert ideal.
Okay, so the extrovert ideal, where's that come from, like historically?
Well, she traces it back to the early 20th century in America. There's this shift, right, from a culture of character to a culture of personality.
Yeah.
Before, it was all about integrity, honor, hard work. But as America industrialized, urbanized, suddenly outward charisma, selling yourself, that became key.
It's like the rise of the salesman.
Exactly. And it wasn't just business, it was everywhere. Kane talks about Dale Carnegie. His courses on public speaking were hugely popular.
Oh, yeah, like how to win friends and influence people, that kind of thing.
Exactly, like a guidebook for this new culture personality.
Wow. So even back then, kids were expected to be outgoing.
Oh, absolutely. Child rearing, education, all affected. Shyness went from being like a normal part of childhood to a problem to be fixed.
It's wild how these cultural shifts impact everything, even parenting.
Right. But here's where the science comes in. Is there actually a difference in the brains of introverts and extroverts?
Yeah, like is it nature or nurture?
Kane says it's both, but she gets into the research.
Yeah.
Introversion and extroversion are rooted in how much stimulation we need to perform well.
Okay.
She talks about psychologist Jerome Kagan, his work with infants.
Okay.
He found high reactive babies, the ones easily stimulated, were more likely to be introverted teens later on.
So you might just be wired that way from the start.
Potentially. And then there's the dopamine sensitivity.
Right. Kane talks about that. What's the connection there?
So dopamine, it's the pleasure and reward chemical, right? Introverts are more sensitive to it, meaning they get more aroused from less stimulation.
That makes so much sense. Like some people need that roller coaster. Others are good with a quiet walk in nature.
Perfect analogy. So how do we use this understanding to actually thrive, especially in a world that feels, well, a lot?
Right, because knowing is one thing, but actually doing it.
Exactly. Well, here's where we get into the power of introverts. Kane challenges this idea that extroverts are always better leaders, more creative.
And they're not.
Not necessarily. She says solitude can actually boost creativity. Introverts often excel in fields that need deep focus, independent work.
Like Einstein, right? The monotony and solitude of a quiet life stimulates the creative mind.
Exactly. And it's not just Einstein. She gives tons of examples. Eleanor Roosevelt, Al Gore, Warren Buffett, Gandhi.
All introverts. Wow, I'm seeing a pattern here.
Right. It's like their introversion wasn't a barrier. It was part of their success.
What about in the workplace, though? Like, offices are usually so busy.
Kane talks about that, too. Studies show top performers often prefer private workspaces, less interruption.
Which is what introverts crave.
Exactly. So maybe those open-plan offices aren't the best idea for everyone.
Good point. We assume collaboration equals productivity, but maybe sometimes you need that space to think deeply.
Right. But let's be real. We can't always avoid those high-stimulation environments.
True. So what do you do if you're, like, thrown into a networking event or a conference?
Well, Kane has this idea, the rubber band theory of personality.
Okay, what's that?
It means introverts can stretch to fit those extroverted settings, but only so much.
Like you have a limit.
Exactly. Like a rubber band. Stretch too far, you snap back. You need quiet time to recharge.
Well, wait, does that mean, like, forcing yourself to be more extroverted?
No, not at all. Kane's not about changing who you are. It's about finding strategies that work for you. Self-awareness is key. Setting realistic expectations.
So not becoming an extrovert, but learning to navigate those situations authentically.
Exactly. Maybe that means taking breaks, finding quiet spaces, even saying no to things that'll drain you.
It's about knowing your limits and honoring your needs.
Right on. And that ties into how this plays out in everyday life, like relationships.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one, especially if you're an introvert with an extrovert partner.
We'll dive deeper into that in the next part, but Kane offers some really good strategies there, too.
I'm already feeling more empowered just thinking about it. But for now, we got to leave you with that cliffhanger.
Back to our introvert deep dive. We were just talking about, like, how to handle those high stimulation situations.
Yeah, that rubber band idea really stuck with me.
It's a good one. But I keep thinking about relationships, Introvert, extrovert, trying to make it work.
Oh, totally. Like, how does that not end up with one person feeling constantly stretched too thin?
Right. Kane's got some research-backed strategies for that.
Hit me with them. What's the secret?
Understanding each other's needs is huge, like truly accepting them.
Okay, sounds good in theory, but practically.
She talks about free trade agreements.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What are those?
Basically, you negotiate. You create an environment that works for both of you.
So it's not about one person becoming more like the other.
Nope. It's compromise.
Yeah.
You mentioned struggling with networking, right? Kane suggests smaller goals. What would feel doable for you at, say, a conference?
Good point. Maybe just talking to, like, 3 new people instead of feeling like I gotta work the whole room.
There you go. It's tailoring it to your needs. Same in relationships. Maybe the introvert agrees to a party, but the extrovert they need quiet time after.
Oh, I like that. Or the extrovert handles small talk, the introvert has a couple deep conversations, everyone's happy.
Exactly. It's a dance. But communication styles, that's another big difference.
Oh, tell me about it. I get so annoyed when I'm trying to have a real talk and someone's on their phone.
Kane says that's classic. Introverts hate multitasking during conversations. Extroverts, they kind of thrive on it.
It's so disrespectful. Like, my thoughts don't matter enough for your full attention.
And Kane says that's how it feels to the introvert. But the extrovert might think their partner's being distant if they're not super engaged.
Wow, so much miscommunication from just that one difference.
Right. Open, honest talking is key. Kane says introverts might need to explain, like, hey, I need focus to really listen.
Instead of just stewing in silence, I can do that.
You got it. And extroverts, they got to be mindful of their multitasking, try to really be present.
This all comes back to those agreements we talked about, finding that middle ground.
It does. But let's switch gears a bit. I know you love the whole creativity connection with introversion.
Oh yeah, that's fascinating. Solitude as, like, a fuel for creativity.
Kane's all about that. All those artists, writers, scientists who were known for being introspective.
Like Einstein again. A mind forever voyaging through strange seas of thought alone. Beautiful.
Right. But is there proof or just cool stories?
Yeah, good question.
Kane digs into the research. There's this psychologist, Anders Ericsson. He studied expert performance.
Okay.
Across fields, the key to mastery is deliberate practice.
Deliberate practice. Meaning?
Intense focus on specific skills for a long time, pushing your boundaries. That often needs solitude, deep concentration.
So me hiding in the bathroom at a party, that's not weakness, it's strategic, introverted practice.
Could be. And it challenges the idea that brainstorming is always best. Sometimes you need to be alone with your thoughts.
Yes. Less noise, more insight.
Right. Kane also mentions studies by Tom DeMarco and Timothy Lister on workplace productivity.
Okay.
Best software devs often work for companies giving them the most privacy, freedom from interruption.
As someone easily distracted, I'm writing this down. Private workspace, peace and quiet. My dream.
Right. But Kane does say, not all introverts need total isolation. She wrote much of quiet in a busy cafe.
Interesting. So maybe it was the caffeine, not just her introverted genius.
Huh. Maybe a bit of both. But her point is, being around others, even without direct interaction, it sparked her thinking.
It's that sweet spot, right? Enough stimulation to be creative, but not overwhelming.
Exactly. And it varies for everyone. Some introverts are solo, others like collaboration, as long as there's space for individual thinking.
That's so key. It's not a one-size-fits-all label. We need a world celebrating that. Different kinds of introverts.
Beautifully put. And that leads to how cultures view this whole thing. Kane talks about Asian American cultures, where quiet observation, listening, that's prized.
Okay, this is where I get really interested. You mentioned soft power before. What's the connection?
Soft power, it's an international relations term, influencing through persuasion, attraction, not force.
So not the loudest voice, but a different kind of leadership.
Exactly. Kane thinks we can all learn from that, regardless of our culture.
You know, this whole deep dive is making me question everything we're told about success.
Right. It's like we're sold this one narrative, but it doesn't always fit who we are.
Like maybe following the crowd isn't always the best path.
Kane's book is all about questioning that, embracing the whole spectrum of personality.
And speaking of embracing the spectrum, we had one more thing, right? The 2008 financial crisis.
You got it. How unchecked extroversion might have played a role. That's a big one, deserves its own space.
Yeah, let's take a breath, then dive into that. All right, let's dive in. We've been praising introversion, but now it's time for the flip side. Unchecked extroversion and Cain's take on the 2008 financial crisis.
Yeah, this part really makes you think. She uses the crisis to show how a culture loving risk, bold personalities, it can backfire big time.
Like Wall Street, right. It's all about fast talk, big deals, constant energy.
Exactly. And Cain says that creates an echo chamber. Everyone's so hyped, they ignore the risks.
She even talks about this investor, Alan, right?
Yeah, Alan. He lost a ton of money because he kept betting on General Motors. Even when things were looking bad, he thought GM's too big to fail, got caught up in the hype.
It's like gambling. You're so focused on winning, you forget you could lose it all.
Cain brings in this neuroeconomist, Baba Shiv, who studies how emotions affect decisions. Okay. Shiv found when we're super stimulated, excited, what Cain calls buzzed, we make impulsive choices, downplay risks.
So on Wall Street, with all that pressure and reward, buzz thinking becomes normal.
That's Cain's point. And she says introverts aren't immune either. Anyone can get caught up if they're not careful.
So how do we avoid that trap? Be like Spock, all logic, no emotion.
Not quite. Cain's counterexample is Warren Buffett.
Oh yeah, Mr. Calm and Collected.
Exactly. He's all about the long game. Doesn't get swayed by hype or market swings. He researches, analyzes, understands the company, then decides.
Total opposite of those buzz investors.
Right. Cain highlights Buffett's inner scorecard, making choices based on your values, not external pressure or what others think.
Speaking of pressure, you mentioned feeling that at work, having to make quick decisions.
All the time.
So let's break this down. How do we cultivate that inner scorecard amidst the chaos?
It's like Buffett saying, forget impressing others. Be true to yourself. And that's powerful, especially for introverts. They're less about external validation, more about purpose.
Marching to your own drumbeat, I love that.
Right. Cain knows it's hard to resist pressure, especially when the world rewards extroverts.
Yeah.
But that inner scorecard, it's crucial for good decisions, a fulfilling life.
So, wrapping up our quiet deep dive, what are the big takeaways?
Biggest one. There's no right way to be. Introvert, extrovert, whatever. Know your strengths, your needs. Build an environment that lets you thrive.
Embrace who you are. Ditch those expectations telling you to be someone else.
Yes. Cain's book is a call to action. Value diversity, authenticity, the power of quiet.
And remember, quiet's not just the absence of noise. It's strength, creativity, insight. This has been eye-opening. I feel like I get introversion in a whole new way.
Me too. To our listeners, if you want to explore personality, culture, the power of quiet, check out Quiet by Susan Cain. It'll stick with you.
It's given me so much to think about. And, Cain talks about how different cultures see introversion. Imagine if we embrace that Asian concept of soft power. That's a whole other deep dive waiting to happen. But for now, that's a wrap. Keep diving deep, everyone, and be your awesome, authentic selves.